Welcome back to Iconic Seasons 1979. In this episode, we're taking a trip back in time to look at more stories from the captivating college years of Larry Bird, a quiet young man from a small town in Indiana. He made a name for himself at Indiana State University. But this isn't just a story about basketball skills. It's also about an unlikely rise to stardom, expertly navigated amidst a whirlwind of media attention. Using the sources today, we're going to piece together stories from this period in Bird's life. Even before he stepped foot on an NBA court, Larry Bird was generating buzz from a surprising range of media outlets. We're talking about names like CBS Radio, Providence Journal, and even the New York Post. They were all eager to get a piece of the rising star. But it wasn't just sports publications. Even a coal magazine reached out to Indiana State. And perhaps the most intriguing request came from the National Solid Waste Management Association. If you can recall, Bird spent some time as a garbage truck, riding a garbage truck in the interim time between when he left Indiana University and when he joined Indiana State. And they had heard about his previous job on a garbage truck and wanted to feature him in their newsletter. This speaks volumes about Bird's captivating story. A small town kid who worked this humble job before becoming a basketball sensation. And this narrative resonated with people far beyond the world of sports. Now imagine trying to manage this media frenzy while your star player shies away from the spotlight. That was the challenge facing Ed McKee. He was Indiana State's sports information director. He was constantly fielding calls from journalists, working out of a small office that used to be the concession stand. You can get a sense of McKee's personality from some of the sources that described him as lanky and genial, suggesting someone who was well-liked and good at building relationships, but a little bit quiet and maybe not accustomed to the level of scrutiny and requests that he was getting. He still had those essential qualities, though, for navigating this particular situation, especially bridging between the two worlds, the one where Larry Bird had come from and this new media frenzy that was surrounding him. The university's leadership, however, understood and fully supported Bird's reserved nature, much different than how it had been at IU. Richard Landini, who was the president of Indiana State at the time, perfectly captured this sentiment. He said, "People with my talents are a dime a dozen. People with Larry Bird's talents come along once in a lifetime." His statement reveals a deep understanding of Bird's exceptional abilities and a commitment to protecting him from the pressures of fame. Instead of forcing Bird to engage in constant interviews and public appearances, Indiana State let his performance on the court speak for itself. This created an aura of mystique around him. It amplified his quiet demeanor. In today's world of social media saturation, where athletes constantly share their lives online, Bird's approach feels revolutionary now. Back then, it forced people to focus on his game, and it fueled his legend. I just listened to a long podcast between Bill Simmons and Chuck Klosterman, and it hewed closely to some of these ideas. One of Klosterman's thoughts was that football, because the players are more anonymous, creates a bit of mystique that way. But Simmons wondered quite a few times if the access to today's athletes unintentionally undermine some of the mystique and some of the legend that we used to have surrounding our athletes. It's almost that their self-awareness creates the conditions that make them less interesting. Something to think about. This hands-off approach was especially evident during Indiana's highly anticipated matchup against Michigan State, coached by brilliant Judd Heathcote. Heathcote recognized the threat Bird posed with his exceptional passing ability, and he devised a unique defensive strategy. He instructed his players to play incredibly tight man-to-man defense on Bird, refusing to give him any space to operate. This was a significant departure from the typical help defense strategies of the time, and it speaks volumes about the respect and fear Bird commanded on the court. Heathcote's approach paid off. They pushed Indiana State to the limit. After the game, though, Heathcote admitted that he'd never encountered a player who demanded So much drastic change to his defensive approach. He remarked that he didn't figure he'd have to check anybody from as far away as he had his players check Bird. But he decided that in this particular instance, he had to. And it highlighted the unique challenge Bird presented. The intensity of that season is best captured by a reaction from Magic Johnson. After the championship game against Bird, Johnson exclaimed, "If I never see another long shot from Bird, it'd be too soon. I've seen enough for a lifetime." This raw emotion reveals the immense pressure and the unforgettable moment that defined that game. Looking back, it's incredible to think that this clash between Indiana State and Michigan State was a preview of the legendary rivalry that would come to define the NBA. Bird versus Magic, these two future icons, going head-to-head on the college stage and each pushing each other to new heights. As we've explored these pivotal moments in Bird's college career, the media frenzy, the strategic silence, the on-court battles, we've gained a glimpse into the forces that shaped him before he even entered the NBA. Now, I'd like to open up the conversation. What aspects of Larry Bird's journey resonate with you the most? Do you think that today's athletes, if they reserve themselves, if they kept behind the curtain a little bit more, would be more interesting to you? Or if you would be more interested in the games if you knew less about them? How do you think Bird's reserved nature contributed to his mystique and his lasting legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check out the show notes for more resources on this incredible period in Larry Bird's story. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Iconic Seasons 1979. We'll be back with more stories from the 1979 season. If you like this week's episode, leave us a rating or review. Until next time, keep your dribble low and your eyes up.